Hi everyone. Today we're going to be reviewing yet another Stoic quote. It's becoming more than a regular occurrence. It's now our regularly scheduled programming. And we're going back to the big homie, Marcus Aurelius, aka the big homie, aka the last good emperor, aka, well, Stoic philosopher extraordinaire. And it goes a little something like this. It can ruin your life only if it ruins your character. Otherwise, it cannot harm you, inside or out. Woof! Marcus dropping bars today. However, let's break it down a little bit further. It can ruin your life only if it ruins your character. Of course, this is a very classic Stoic thought, where virtue is the ultimate, is the only good, if you will. And the reason for it is because virtue, according to the Stoics, is something that is, in their mind, the only thing that can guarantee human happiness. Now, you could argue there is certainly a valid point for that, of course, to be an upstanding moral character, or rather even, and it doesn't necessarily have to be either good or evil, because so much as it is, as long as you stay consistent to your morals, people respect others who who stick to their moral character, and whether or not you agree with them or not, it's people who do have that strong character where they won't flinch, where that stick to their guns mentality, people tend to respect a whole lot more. But Going back to the concept of virtue, this is a very, very classical thought, because again, there is, of course, in ancient Rome, the concept of virtus, which essentially was virtue, and you're supposed to, as the head of the family, as the pater familias, you were supposed to embody that virtue, and that could be, honesty in your business dealings and with your family. It could be bravery. It could be a combination of those two. It could be a whole bunch of other things. It could be kindness. It could be generosity. As long as you had virtus, you were considered to be a good citizen, a good Roman, a good person, and a good father, which essentially is sort of the goal, I think, of Stoicism, is to be that shining example no matter what the world throws at you, and to stick to your virtue. And this quote sums it up perfectly. And like Marcus says in the second part, otherwise it cannot harm you, inside or out. So essentially what he's saying is that if a situation arises that has the potential to either harm you, you need to keep your character intact. Because if your character is intact, essentially you become invincible. Your legacy is intact. Your family name lives on, and people are going to recognize what a good person you are. Even let's say let's take it to the logical conclusion that it leads to your demise. Now, I do agree with this. It reminds me almost of the quote, or rather the situation: would you rather die on your feet or live on your knees? I do agree with it, though, because one's character is important, and without it spiraling off into a tangent with, the concept of the sociological concept of face, a character essentially can act as a mask, as your face, when you put on in public or wherever else. But what I do like about the Stoics is that they do stress consistency, is that whether or not you're in public and private, with yourself, with your family, with your students, with your colleagues, with whoever it is, you need to remain consistent. Your virtue has to shine through, and you have to embody that. And I think that this is probably one of the Stoic quotes that I do tend to agree with the most, for specifically that reason. Now, otherwise it can't harm you, inside or out. This is where it kind of gets a little bit copy for me, because again, what's the context really does matter. I think that, of course, if you're being excessively slandered or anything else, that's obviously going to ruin your character. Perhaps this is a sort of a call to avoid like behavior that you could be slandered for. Which, I mean, again, who wants to put themselves in that position anyway? Because you're going to just make your life a lot harder. But I do like this one. This one's a little bit more straightforward than the other ones. I don't really think there's a whole lot to unpack in there, of course, because otherwise it's going to spiral into a conversation about what, essentially what does character equal sociological face? What kind of, if, as long as you have your life, isn't that sort of the ultimate goal? So, who cares what other people think of you? Essentially, that's actually a good point. Who cares what other people think of you? That could almost be a direct retort to this quote. But that being said, it is important how people perceive us. It's important, and of course, everybody strives to have a positive perception in the world. That said, what a positive perception is, of course, that the culture determines that, and society at large determines that. Now, in order to seem a good person, you'd have to do X, Y, or Z, or whatever else it is. It's been through the ages. So it really is. It's a very subjective thing, but at the risk of, because I got to wrap it up and I won't ramble, I think a better question would be, is that should your character be a monolith in this sort of a sense, rather than, if you're like or should you stick to your virtue, or do virtues change over time? Anyway, that's my thought and my analysis of the quote for today. Drop a like on the video and a comment down below to share your thoughts. If I've completely missed the mark, please let me know. Also, if you have a Stoic quote or a philosophical quote that you want me to explore, feel free to drop it down in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.